Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. It is the day after the All-Star Game and All-Star Slam Dunk Contest and Three-Point Contest and Skills Challenge. They all happened in the same night. It was a very truncated but busy All-Star Sunday. Don't worry if you couldn't watch it all. I have you covered. My brilliant co-host, John Sapichetti, has you covered, as we had nothing better to do on a Sunday than watch every single minute of what sometimes seemed like meandering basketball and meaningless basketball, but it's still basketball, so we watched. Sap, All-Star Sunday, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was something to do for, about 4 hours. I always like the TNT aspect of it, too. With Shaq and Kenny Smith and Dwayne Wade there. Barkley wasn't there last night for whatever reason. And Dwayne Wade I like, but he's not Charles Barkley. I mean, Barkley, Shaq, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson, that has a feel of a radio show, doesn't it? Because you can just tell they insult each other. They'll talk over each other. They'll go at it. I think it's the best post-game show in the history of television.
Yeah, everybody's been trying to replicate it for years now.
And they can't.
Baseball's been trying to replicate it with, Ortiz and A-Rod and Frank Thomas. Football's tried to replicate it extremely unsuccessfully with like a million different iterations. It is. And I mean, it's been so popular and so good that they're currently airing like a 5-part documentary series on the making of it.
It's so good.
Yeah, it is good. I agree with you though. Dwayne Wade's good on air. I don't love him personally as a Celtics fan. But Barkley is in my mind the best at it. Not because he's the most knowledgeable, but because he's the best character.
Oh, without question. I don't even know if he watches the games really, but whatever it is, he fakes it pretty well, and he gets some of the greatest takes. And then him and Shaq going at it. It's just like two best friends that insult each other. So it's a fabulous show.
Kenny's
I love
the most
that part
insightful of the three of them.
Except
he's
he
the one
was
who
kind of
watches all the
losing it.
games.
Yeah, but he was kind of losing it during the 3-point contest. I think he was getting the numbers wrong. They still didn't know what the value of each ball
that's
was.
Math.
I mean,
that's different
math.
thing.
Yeah, no one was really good in math during the 3-point contest. The max number you could get is 40 in that. So, because they had the Mountain Dew shots that were worth 3 points each, and then the red, white, and blue balls were worth 2, and all of that. So it added up to 40. That was an exciting contest to say the least. But I'm almost 58 years old. I might be the oldest guy that still enjoys watching the All-Star Game. It's a much younger audience, and then there's me enjoying the All-Star Game. But I tuned in, and I know what you're going to get at an All-Star Game. You're not going to get defense. You're going to get a bunch of 3-point shots. In fact, I ran some numbers from the game. There were 320 points in the game as Team LeBron won 170 to 150 because he's the best executive in all.
I've been calling it Team Jaylen Brown. Is that not what they were?
Well, he played pretty well actually.
Team Jaylen Brown defeated Team Jason Tatum. That's how I saw it.
You could make that if you want. There were 221 shots attempted from 2-point shots, 70 of 88. That's 80%. There was no defense being played, and from beyond the arc, 58 of 133, 44%. So 133 of the 221 shots were from beyond the arc. And then there were only 10 free throws, and they hit 6 of them. So they only shot 60% from the free throw line. They shot 44% from 3. So you're not going to get any defense, but you're going to get incredible skill level from everybody out there, with the possible exception of Domantas Sabonis, who ironically won the skills contest. He really didn't do anything in the game. He looked completely lost during the game. And there's always one or two guys that go out there and go, I just don't fit into this. I'm really not a 3-point shooter. I'm not as athletic or whatever.
It happened to be 2 of the 3 white guys.
It tends to be that way, right?
Vucevic, I remember Sabonis.
Yeah.
Luka Doncic fits in just fine.
He fits in just fine. He's got a lot of swag to his game. There were often times, though, 15, 20 years ago, where Tim Duncan never really fit. And he did win an MVP one year. I think he was co-MVP one year. But Tim Duncan, always in the All-Star game, didn't really fit in. It's because he's such a fundamentally sound player. It didn't really his game was not enhanced by the All-Star game. But it was a typical All-Star game, right? Lots of scoring. And you just watch players like Steph Curry and Dame Lillard and go, holy crap, these guys are playing at a different level than anyone we've ever seen in terms of deep shooting.
Yeah, because I was talking about it a little bit. I did a live post-game reaction on my YouTube channel. And the crazy thing about them shooting so deep is it's not like typically when you go to the Y or you go to the JCC and you're just fooling around, you're heaving half court shots.
Right.
They're not heaving anything. They're just pulling up like a normal jumper. It doesn't even look like they're exerting more effort than on a normal jumper. That's their range. That's legitimately their range. They can just, like a normal jump shot, pull from there. They're not doing anything different. They're just rising up and shooting. It just happens to be from half court.
Yeah, they make a 40-foot attempt look like a 12-foot attempt. It's like a great quarterback, whether it be Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, who I think are the two most gifted throwers of the football in the NFL. They can throw the ball 65 yards without really making it look like there's any effort. Other quarterbacks, maybe have to run up and make that throw, whereas those two guys,
like a heave. But
it's a heave, right? Dame Lillard's taking like a regular jump shot from 42 feet, and he's drilling it. And Steph Curry is doing the same thing. I mean, those two guys are just, man, I thought either one of them should.
And they're not banking them either. That's the crazy thing. They're not banking them in from that far.
Giannis banks 3-pointers, unlike most other players.
But I'm saying with the deep ones, they're not banking.
They're nothing but net.
Drilling them.
No, nothing but net. It doesn't even look like it's any kind of prayer. I mean, I get the feeling that they could hit at least one out of every three of those shots on a regular basis, and that's insane. Giannis did win the MVP. I don't think he deserved it. He basically scored on dunks and lay-ins. I know he was 16 for 16 from the field.
Do you know that's the second best, not in All-Star game history, in NBA history? The most is 18 of 18 in a game from Will Chamberlain, who we talked about on the last show. But this is the second best that anybody's ever done in terms of a perfect scoring, a perfect shooting night.
Right, but no one was
attempts. I am aware that they were all dunks except for the 3 threes he banked in.
Yeah, he's banking in 3. So he was 16 for 16 from the floor, 3 of 3 from 3, 35 points. He wins the MVP. But, I mean, Dame had 32 points on 11 of 20 shooting, 8 of 16 from 3, and Steph had 28 points, 10 of 19 from the floor, and 8 of 16 from 3. I thought either one of those guys deserved the MVP more than Giannis, but, I mean, it's tough to not give the guy an MVP who's perfect from the floor, even though no one was really playing defense. And I believe 13 of his 16 made field goals were within a foot of the rim, which is great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But, there was more artistry with Dame Lillard and Steph Curry, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, even the 3-pointers he hit weren't particularly pretty, but, it's even when you could see it with like Zion Williamson is great. He missed 4 dunks. So just by the fact that putting a basketball in a basket isn't as easy as it looks, going 16 for 16 is impressive. I mean, I know that they were they looked for the most part all super easy, but the odds that he would screw one of those up is really high, and he didn't. So I have no problem with him winning the MVP.
Jet, I can't hit the toilet 16 straight times that I go take a leak. I usually at some point, hit the rim or whatever. So difficult. It is, especially when you get to almost 58 years old and you're 3 a.m, you're awakened from a dead sleep to go to the bathroom. But
better than going in the bed. So
that's true. I don't want to get into depends. If that's the case, then I may just give up.
I had this thought process, and I talked about in the last show why I thought Zion was going to win MVP, and it's the exact reason that Giannis won, is because I thought he was just going to get uncontested dunks in the paint and pile up points. But basically, Giannis just did that instead of Zion. Zion, I still feel like he would have won the MVP if he didn't whiff on his first 4 dunks. Just absolutely whiffed on him. I mean, perfect alley-oops, and he couldn't slam it home. And then he barely played anymore after that. I think the nerves got to him a little bit.
Probably a little bit. I mean, this is a big moment for a young guy. But with Giannis and Zion, I think they both have the same approach when they play. They're like max effort guys, kind of like Russell Westbrook. And Westbrook's won a couple of All-Star MVPs because he kind of treats it the same way he treats a regular season game. Other players that just kind of going through the motions, laughing, not really taking it seriously. I don't think Giannis knows any other way to play other than full tilt. So that gives him a reason. He's like, I've got a chance to go to the basket. I'm just going to lay it in up and dunk it. I'm not going to just lay off. And I think Zion eventually will win this MVP at some point. He's so damn young. He's going to be in the game quite often. I think he's going to win those MVPs because he's a max effort guy. That's what you kind of need to stand out at times in these all-star games. Although if you have the exquisite talent level of Dame Lillard and Steph Curry as shooters, you can also stand out.
Yeah, and I mean, the talk on Twitter and social media after the game wasn't so much Giannis going perfect, but who's the better deep shooter, Lillard or or Curry? Because, I mean, everybody knows Curry's the greatest shooter ever. And it's not a debate. But at this point in their careers, who's the better deep shooter? I think it's a fair debate. I think it's actually a really fun debate. And Dame Lillard, because he hasn't won MVPs or championships, sort of gets overshadowed, which is why this is such a great event for him to compete in, because then people who don't typically watch the Blazers go, holy crap, this guy's incredible.
He really is. And he's only about 6'1", and Steph's barely 6'3". To dominate at that size is amazing. Let's not talk more about Steph Curry and Dame Lillard, because I think we could have a really good either or at some point.
We'll do that later,
yeah. We do every couple of weeks.
For sure.
There's a great either or.
I also think it's hysterical that the two colleges they went to, Weber State and Davidson.
Right.
So you could find some guys. They don't have to all go to Duke.
No, and Dame was the 6th pick in his draft, and Steph was the 7th pick in his draft. Minnesota had the 5th and 6th pick in that draft, and they bypassed Steph not once but twice. Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio were the picks before Steph.
Same position.
Same position. Yeah, they really wanted a point guard. They picked 2 of them, and they didn't pick Steph Curry. And as we said, Dame was the 6th pick in his draft. They're both sensational players. Yeah,
and it really is. The All-Star Game is a great showcase of their talents. And I mean, obviously, Curry won the 3-point contest in really exciting fashion, hitting the he needed to hit the last shot to win it, just like last year. Buddy Hield, same thing. 3-point contest is morphed into a very, very exciting contest, because there's no more guys who just go and stiff. The worst person was Jaylen Brown. He had 17 points. I mean, that's not terrible.
Yep.
I remember Antoine Walker. He had like 5 one year where
Well, Antoine may have bet against himself in that conversation.
It's possible. So I'm just saying that the league has such good shooting now that even a bad round is a really good. Like no one's embarrassing themselves out there.
There were a bunch of guys that weren't even in it that you go, where's this guy? Where's that guy? This guy's a great 3-point shooter. Where was Joe Harris? He's a 51% free throw shooter. Obviously, if Klay Thompson's healthy, he's in the contest.
Yeah, but Buddy Hield won it last year.
I think what they wanted to do, because of the pandemic and limit as few players going, that they just said, okay, we're going to take the guys that are in the game and use them in the 3-point contest rather than bring in other guys, other than the dunk contest, with no one in their right mind
no one
in
would
the
do
game would do it. Yeah, you're not going to get Zion, LeBron, and Giannis use 3 names that could have been in the dunk contest. They're not going to do it.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the winner of the dunk contest was household name Anthony Simons.
Yes.
His winning dunk was a blowing a kiss at the rim. I'd give the dunk contest this year a B-.
That's higher than I'd give it. The guys were good. It's just they're not known. And we've kind of seen every single dunk. I think it's run its course. I would prefer they get rid of the dunk contest and just have a tournament of horse. I think that would be more fun.
I do think horse would be really fun. They did do it one year. I remember Rondo played Durant and gave him a run.
Yeah.
Rondo, not a good jump shooter, excellent horse player.
Oh, sure. Yeah, if there's money on the table, he's going to hit his shots. He did that in the bubble last year in the finals. Yeah. He had some big threes for the Lakers on their way to winning their championship. So I would prefer to see horse, because it's a game any player could get into it. I mean, obviously Steph Curry would be kind of ridiculous in it.
It could hypothetically take forever, though, with some of these guys.
It could.
So that's the problem.
They're
could go hours.
Yeah. But you do that on the Saturday, because next year you go back to the normal MO of Saturday with all these events and then the game being held on Sunday.
I agree with you for the most part that we've seen pretty much everything with dunking, though I thought that, and then I saw Aaron Gordon last year do stuff that I've never seen before. So I think some guys, whether they just be freak athletes or their creativity, can take it to another level. None of these guys were particularly creative, in part because, they weren't allowed to bring in like other guys or props really for the most part, because they were trying to keep it, low key in terms of the amount of people coming in. But I thought, none of the dunks were terrible.
No, they were fine.
Yeah, I'd say C+, B-. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad, especially because I think the first round, all of them hit their dunk on the first attempt, which
they did.
I think that's worth something to me.
Yeah, no, it was okay. I mean, the game was fine. We got to see Steph and Dame put on a show.
But it's been better.
It is. It is, because you have huge stars in it, and there's natural drama. I mean, when Curry was going through his last round, he had to hit 4 or 5 on the last rack, including the money ball, and that's what he did.
I will say the dunk contest did make one excellent change, which was they were joking about as the Dwayne Wade rule, which is true. It is because of him. But then that it's just a blind vote instead of a point total for the last dunk. That you're just blindly voting. You're saying who you think was better of their one dunk. So no more trying to cheat for players who have played with Dwayne Wade before. They had to put that in there. He was a dirty player and he was a dirty judge. So.
Dwayne Wade was a very dirty player, but he got away with it because he's so damn good. And I think he was great with the media. A lot of young players love him, and he's an engaging guy. But yeah, he was pretty much a dirty player, as was John Stockton. John Stockton was an incredibly dirty player. But while you're smiling and you're a dirty player, you can sometimes get away with it.
Yep. And just a quick note: the two Celtics, because we are still located in Boston, Sap. The two Celtics played well in the All-Star game. Jason Tatum finished his second appearance and first start with 21 points, 4 steals, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. Nice game for him. Jaylen Brown came off the bench for the winning team. He had 22 points, 2 steals, and 5 rebounds. Also, a couple of really difficult three-pointers that he canned. One was like a 360 over James Harden. And another really cool moment, and he was talking about this after the game, was he got fouled on one of those threes, and his brother happened to be sitting courtside right there, and his brother's the one who helped pick him up off the court. So he said that was a very special moment for him. Very cool that his brother was there to pick him up off the court, and his grandfather, who's a cancer survivor and a COVID survivor, and is a very, very close with Jaylen Brown, sort of his mentor. He was there too, and it's Jaylen Brown's hometown of Atlanta. So I think a really good showing from both of the young Celtics in the All-Star game.
Absolutely. They are certain All-Stars. We'll see them many, many more times in the All-Star game. And I'm glad they went. I mean, I know they're dealing with some issues, Jaylen with the left knee tendonitis and Jason Tatum still trying to recover from COVID, but I don't think they exerted themselves in the three-point contest. And they were fine in the game. And now they've got a little bit of time to rest. And then the second half starts on Thursday against Brooklyn. They should be fine. They're both young, strong guys. So I'm
hopefully
glad
they were recruiting. I'm hoping that they were recruiting all the players to come to Boston.
Yeah, see how that works.
Specifically Bradley Beal.
That would be nice.
I don't think it's happening. What was I going to say about Jaylen Brown? What I was really impressed with is that he came off the bench and decided, I'm not gonna just be starstruck by all these guys. I'm gonna score. I like that he tried to take Tatum one-on-one almost immediately with coming into the game. I thought that was one of the cooler moments in the game. Let's just quickly go into the box score for the guys on the Lakers who were there. LeBron, 13 minutes, 4 points, 2 of 7 shooting. Not a great showing from LeBron.
I don't think he really wanted to be there. And I think in the second half,
you don't think so?
No, but I also think in the second half of the game, he was on the bench. He seemed to be very happy and very involved, and he was happy to see all these young players out there. He was in his 17th All-Star game, so he put the team together. And look, Chris Paul showed again why he's such a great player. He had 19 assists in the game. 16 assists, right? 16 assists in the game. Now he's the all-time assist leader in the history of All-Star games. So, to me, you went from LeBron to Chris Paul, probably the 2 highest basketball IQs in the league. Had the likes of Steph Curry, Dame Lillard, Luka. So I think LeBron was just pleased to sit back, almost like a proud dad watching his kids play. And
do you think it was more of that, or was it more an FU to the league for having the All-Star game?
I don't think so. He's usually gone along with what the league wants to do. I mean, if he was that upset about having the game, he wouldn't have attended. So he was there, and he seemed to be pretty happy while he was there. And look, he's missed one game in the first half of the season. They're coming back Friday to start the second half. So he's got about a week's break here to kind of recharge the batteries and try to get the Lakers maybe as the number 1 seed or at least the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Again, he's the most scrutinized athlete in the world. And we're going to talk about him a little bit later in the podcast about something that has nothing to do with basketball. But, if any other player played limited minutes and didn't really put up great numbers, no one would say, damn, I can't believe so-and-so only did this. But because of it's LeBron James, we have to delve into it.
Yep. I thought he was the least valuable player of the All-Star game.
Well, it's all right. He'll be the most valuable player of the regular season and the finals.
He will not be the most valuable player of the regular season.
Mm,
That's not going to happen, Seth. I don't
okay,
think you. I don't even think you believe that
he's
anymore.
in contention, Jet. I mean, he's still
Yeah,
a
he's in
top
contention, but he's
three candidate.
dropping like a rock.
That's why they play the second half of the season. You see.
Well, you mentioned Chris Paul, which is good, and because I know you had no idea what our second segment of the show was going to be, so just, I mean, that's really great foresight by you, Sap.
Yes.
Chris Paul is somebody that I don't know about you, Sap. I used to not be able to stand. I really just hated Chris Paul, didn't get all the love for him, and in the past, I'd say year, I've done a complete 180 on him. In terms of not just his play on the court, but his leadership off the court, I think he's the best union president the league's ever had.
Oh, without question. I mean, he's also a great player. So, I mean, when you have a great player who's the union president, there adds that cachet to it. So he just has those leadership qualities. Like, he's on his fourth team. He makes every team he goes to better.
Michael Doliak before him or something like that.
Right. So,
Pat Garrity.
People aren't gonna align with a guy that they barely know if he's even in the league, let alone how good a player. And Chris Paul, to me, is an all-time great. He's the closest thing I've seen to the real Isaiah Thomas as a player.
Yeah, and that's who he's gotten compared to a lot.
It's so similar. The high intellect, the toughness, the mental and physical toughness, the leadership ability.
He does seem more well liked by his peers than Isaiah Thomas was.
Right, but I don't think as well liked by his teammates as Isaiah, because his teammates would go to battle for Isaiah Thomas. Those guys adored him. I mean,
there's a reason Isaiah Thomas played his whole career on one team, and Chris Paul's been on 6.
Well, he started with New Orleans. He went to the Clippers, Houston, Oklahoma City, and now this is the 5th team in Phoenix. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I like to compare basketball players with football players sometimes. And I've always compared Kevin Durant and Aaron Rodgers, my favorite quarterback, exquisitely talented, never quite thought of as the greatest because, there was Tom Brady playing at the same time, like there's LeBron James playing at the same time in basketball. But I also think Aaron Rodgers and Chris Paul, and they have the State Farm commercials, not together but independently, are somewhat similar. I think they can be difficult to play with because they're so smart and such perfectionists. And I think that happens with Chris Paul, that times he's playing at a different level than the other players on the court. And sometimes you need to understand what the other players are thinking. I don't drive. We know that, right? I mean, I don't drive an automobile, but I've talked to people that have, like you and everybody else I know. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you have to anticipate what the other drivers are doing. You could be the greatest driver in the world, but if someone in the lane next to you or in front of you and backing you who's not a really good driver, you have to account for that. Well, I think Chris Paul's learning that not everybody's at the same level as him in terms of intellectually when it comes to basketball. So he's learning how to, I guess, adapt and tolerate his teameats. And it's paying off in Phoenix.
Well, you can see just in the past few years, he has a tremendous impact on winning in that he's elevated a team last year that was the Thunder that was blatantly trying to tank. And he lifted them to almost into the second round. They went 7 games in the first round. And then this year, Phoenix has been one of the most downtrodden franchises of the past decade. And he has completely changed their trajectory. I do feel like, strangely enough, the team that had the most talent that he was on the Clippers. And that's where I think a lot of people sort of turned on Chris Paul and saying, well, if he's so good, why can't he elevate this team to a championship? And obviously he was being blocked by a pretty damn good Warriors team. And the Thunder were good at that period of time too. But I think there are some questions as to, well, he got what he wanted. He didn't want to play for what were the Hornets at the time, and he got to LA. First, he wanted to go to the Lakers. That was blocked by the late Commissioner Stern. And then he ended up on the Clippers. And the Clippers had Blake Griffin, who we'll talk about in a minute for different reasons, and DeAndre Jordan and Doc Rivers. And everybody said, okay, this is a title contending team. And they never really did compete for a title. So I think a lot of people soured on Chris Paul there. But in the past 2 years, I think people like you and me have seen the impact he's had on teams maybe with lesser talent and elevating them, and also the leadership of the bubble and getting all these players registered to vote and this all-star game and raising all this money for the HBCUs. And he's excellent with the media. He seems excellent with the young players and the old players and the players who don't make much money and the players who do make a lot of money. So I think that that period of time when he was on the Clippers is an interesting period of time for him because the expectations were the highest on him and the talent was maybe the highest around him, but that was probably the least amount of success in some way he had.
Well, you look at Blake Griffin, and at that time he was a rising star. So maybe, they didn't get the pecking order right. I think to really be a successful basketball team, there has to be, a leader, the alpha dog, and then Robin, right? So there's got to be Batman, there's got to be Robin. And to me, Chris Paul is Batman. Even though he's only about 6 feet tall, he's not the most physically imposing guy on the court, but he's so talented and so smart on the court and has all those leadership abilities. Maybe Blake Griffin wasn't willing to be Robin to Chris Paul's Batman. I think that's why it works in LA with LeBron and Anthony Davis. Those guys are clearly defined as the alpha dog and the number 2 guy. That's why at times it didn't work in Cleveland with LeBron and Kyrie, because Kyrie paints himself as the best player in the world. Now we're going to see what happens with Brooklyn, where Kyrie's the 3rd best player on that team. Seems to be working okay, but we haven't seen Harden, Kyrie, and Durant play a lot together, right? Because Durant's been out a while. Kyrie went AWOL for a few weeks. And, of course, Harden wasn't there for the first few weeks of the season. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in Brooklyn. And then when you add in Blake Griffin, there's yet another player that's going to be have to be fed. But, yeah, Chris Paul, at times I was always turned off by him. And sometimes his demeanor on the court, it seemed like he was just miserable with teammates. And now the last couple of years, he's elevated to the point where I would say that Chris Paul and Luka are my 2nd and 3rd favorite players in the league, well behind LeBron. But I would say Chris Paul and Luka would be number 2 and number 3. Because, again, I'm always partial to the great passers, the guys who just are so smart on the basketball court, more than just the pure scorers. And that's why LeBron's my favorite player. That's why growing up, Magic Johnson was my favorite player. I like the guys that, make everybody around them better. And certainly LeBron does that better than anybody, but so does Chris Paul at a very high level.
It seems pretty clear he's going to be a head coach in the NBA.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Or a GM. I mean, I think he's more suited for a coach because he seems like a hands-on guy. Like he will really
I think that's
motivate.
Why he can't stay in one place for that long.
No,
it wears thin to constantly having somebody, barking at you all the time.
He's a perfectionist.
I think that's why he's been on 5 different teams. He can't. Other players start to get sick of it. I get it. It's
especially
annoying.
The veteran players, right? Like I'm sure James Harden got sick of it. But in 2017, 2018, they were this close to winning a championship. Let's not forget, Chris Paul gets hurt in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. They hold on and win that game. Houston's up 3-2. If he's not hurt, they win that series, and they would take on Cleveland and LeBron James in the NBA Finals, probably beat Cleveland. They would have won a title. So it would have been a title for Harden and Chris Paul, and that kind of changes the narrative of those 2 all-time great players because they really are all-time great players. But so he's come that close to winning a championship. But he's in a perfect spot right now, don't you think? Because Devin Booker's a young guy who obviously likes that leader next to him in the backcourt. DeAndre Ayton, man, the few times I've seen DeAndre Ayton talk about Chris Paul, he holds him in the same stratosphere that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers teammates hold Tom Brady. I mean, they talk about like whatever Chris Paul says we do. We know he's a leader. He's in a really good spot there. And he's also got a great coach in Monty Williams, who I think is the front runner for Coach of the Year, who I've always been a big fan of. I wanted the Lakers to hire him a couple years ago rather than Frank Vogel, but Phoenix beat them to the punch. And I'm a big fan of Monty Williams. I think he's a superb coach. Doc Rivers can be a tough guy as well, right? I mean, he's battled his players, whether it was Rondo when he was in Boston, even Paul Pierce early in his run in Boston. And we've seen him have problems with Kawhi and Paul George. So maybe it didn't work out with Chris Paul for some sort of reason, and it can't always be on the player. Doc Rivers, maybe we've kind of overrated him as a coach. And, he's had these battles with some of his star players. Now he's in Philly doing a good job. But maybe he wears thin also. I mean, a lot of these guys do. It happens. I mean, there's one Greg Popovich who just has the cachet to be the guy for over 20 years. Other than that, is after a while, the message turns blank and the players tune it off.
Yeah, I think the end game with Chris Paul is, it's a great story with Phoenix, and they're a very good team. They're not winning the championship this year. They're not winning the championship anytime soon. I think the end game with him is probably similar to what the end game was with Jason Kidd, another all-time great point guard,
Yep.
is he'll be maybe the starter, maybe the backup on a team that wins the championship in his last year. He signs with a team he thinks has a good chance to win it, and plays one more year where he's, pretty diminished, but still can contribute in limited minutes. I could see that.
And takes less money because he's making $40 million a year.
And then becomes a coach almost immediately after retiring.
Almost immediately,
because we'll hire him
without question. He's got it all to be a great coach, and maybe that team would be the Lakers. Although sometimes you don't want to play with your best friend. I mean, LeBron's his best friend in the league.
So they've butted heads recently with some of the union stuff.
Friends do butt heads. I've often said to many of my friends, including you, sometimes if I get mad at you, that means I love you. That doesn't mean I hate you. I only get mad at people I really like. So, and I'm sure, I'm not trying to put myself in the stratosphere of LeBron James and Chris Paul, but sometimes friends will clash. And, that would be an interesting, but man, how exquisite would that be on the court? LeBron James, Chris Paul, pity the three guys on the court with them because those guys are like miles ahead of everybody. The other three guys be looking around going, we're basically playing with like Da Vinci and Michelangelo at this point. We better be pretty sharp.
Yeah, I think he'll probably just keep signing short-term deals until he finds the right fit. I mean, he's still got, obviously he was an all-star this year and he had 16 assists in the all-star game. He still has a lot to give. So he's not at the point in his career where he's got to start thinking about, I'm going to be a reserve. He's still one of the top players in the league. I'm saying like in the last 2 years, maybe you could see him signing with whoever at that point is considered the title favorite.
The best team other than the Lakers, and being a LeBron fan, I'd love to see that, would be Milwaukee. You put him there. I think the Giannis.
Bucks really wanted him to be there.
They did.
It's just Milwaukee's a tough sell for a lot of reasons.
Not just that, but the money too. I don't think they could quite afford him. But again,
and he still deserves to get paid a lot of money. I mean, he's not a very diminished player from where he was.
No, but that would be a perfect spot to end your career with Giannis. And look, Oscar Robertson was an all-time great player who never broke through till he went to Milwaukee and played with the then Lou Alcindor. And he was past his prime, but he was still really good as a point guard. And they got together and won one championship and ended up going to another one a few years later. Maybe that's what Chris Paul does late in his career.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously it's good for Chris Paul that he's been on teams that are competitive and he makes them competitive too. I think it would turn bad pretty quick if he was on a team that was not playing well and not in a playoff hunt.
Oh, right.
I think it would be an issue. As it sort of became with Blake Griffin, who's now on the Brooklyn Nets, obviously not as accomplished or as good of a player as Chris Paul at any point in his career, but at one point was considered one of the up-and-coming superstars of the NBA. He did dunk over a car. He was the first overall pick in the NBA draft. He's been sort of middling for the past couple of years since he's been traded from the Clippers to the Detroit Pistons, and now he secured his release. In fact, he was so miserable in Detroit that he gave back $13 million to be released and signed for the veterans minimum in Brooklyn. This year, he's been averaging 12 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds, 31 years old. He's shooting 31% from three and just 36% from the floor in about 31 minutes a game. Sap, do you see Blake Griffin helping the Nets, or is he just so diminished at this point the name is bigger than the actual skill set?
I think the name is bigger than the skill set. He hasn't dunked since 2019, and that's what he's most famous for. So obviously the injuries,
I don't know that he can all that much anymore. I mean, he can still dunk, but I don't think he can elevate.
Still dunk. No, the injuries have diminished the athleticism, and his calling card was athleticism. I think he's a pretty bright player. You see his assists over the years have been sneakily good. He's a skilled guy. When he first came into the league, he was essentially scoring from 2 feet in, and he learned to become a better perimeter shooter. He's going to be a guy that most likely shares time with Jeff Green, who's actually had a nice year for Brooklyn. Brooklyn's probably still in the market for one more big guy, whether it's Drummond or Whiteside or JaVale McGee. One of those three are going to end up in Brooklyn. One will probably end up with the Lakers, and one will end up somewhere else. I expect all three of those players to play on a different team by the time we get to the trade deadline. So I think he will come off the bench. There may be some games in the playoffs where he contributes enough to put them over the top. The only problem is, again, if you've got Harden, Kyrie Irving, Durant, and Blake Griffin on the court together, now it gets a little bit more complicated. I mean, I think they can work it with the other three guys because Harden's really taken a step back in terms of, scoring. He's leading the league in assists. Now, if you put another star out there, does it get a little too complicated? Or does Blake Griffin just look and say, this is my best chance to win a championship? I'm all of a sudden going to become a much better rebounder, concentrate on that, and just try to help those guys, carry us over the top. A lot depends on him.
So what's his role? What's his role on that team as you envision it? What's the best case scenario for Blake Griffin?
I'd say 18 to 22 minutes a game coming off the bench. Again, Jeff Green has played well, so those guys can split the 5 with DeAndre Jordan, and if they want to go, if they want to go really big, they can go DeAndre Jordan, either Jeff Green and Blake Griffin, and then have Durant at the natural 3. If they want to go small, they could put Blake at center with Durant at the 4, and use Joe Harris, as a stretch 4. I mean, there's so many different combinations you can have. And again, the NBA's changed over the years. It's kind of positionless. So I would expect 18 to 22 minutes a night. Maybe gives them 10 points and 5 rebounds per game, which, is a little bit more because they did lose some of their depth in acquiring James Harden. So, he can offer that.
So do you think ultimately he's going to help, or is it more of does the needle move one way or the other with this?
I don't think it really moves all that much. I think, again, in the playoffs, maybe in the first round against pick a team. I mean, the Knicks. And, it's a tight game and he has a big quarter and puts them over the top. That's about it. I don't think he's going to hurt the team all that much.
I just don't know what they're going to ask of him because the shooting numbers that I gave you, he's not going to spread the court. He can shoot from 3-pointer, like he can physically do it, but just 31% from 3, which is below the league average, and just 36% from the floor, which is showing you he's not getting easy baskets in the paint like he used to. He had, when he was in his prime, he was averaging around 51% field goal percentage because he was, a lot of dunks, a lot of layups, a lot of stuff in the paint. And so that's
he was
dropped
second
off.
team. He was second team All NBA several times. He was third team All NBA just 3 years ago. So it's not that he's that far removed, but a player like that who relies so much on athleticism, when they lose it, right? It just all of a sudden is gone. I don't think he's going to move the needle all that much. He's also playing with better players. So in theory, he's going to have more open jumpers when you've got Durant, Harden, and Kyrie on the floor with him. Or maybe he's going to be an energy guy off the bench. Who the hell knows what they're going to do with him? It's not costing them a hell of a lot of money.
No, it's a veteran's minimum. It's costing them nothing.
Yeah.
It's costing him a roster spot.
If it doesn't work, they can say, move on. If he causes any problems, then they can just let him go. But he doesn't seem to be a guy really that
I don't think so.
Any problems. He seems like a pretty decent guy.
The thing that I think is funny in the sort of the unreasonable picture people are painting of him at this point in his career, where you're seeing all of these photoshops of like the big 4 now. Like he's not at that nearly that level anymore, and he's not even the 4th best player in the Nets.
No, Jeff Green's better.
And Joe Harris is better, and DeAndre Jordan is probably more effective for what they want to do. So, I think that people are getting a little carried away with the name. I always think that adding to a team that has championship aspirations, adding veteran depth is never a bad thing. I don't think you can have enough of it. I think, frankly, that's what has hurt the Celtics, is that they just barely have any. So I think in that regard that he's a guy that you can put on the court that won't screw up royally and knows where he's supposed to be. I hear a lot of people saying he's, a really good passer. I think he's a fine passer, but if his best skill set is passing, you have Kyrie Irving and James Harden on the team. Do you really need a guy whose best skill set is passing? So, I think some scoring off the bench, but they need to find a way to get him easy baskets, because the shooting numbers show to me that even if he's wide open, he's not going to – no one's going to cover him, because he's shooting 30% from 3, which isn't good enough to warrant somebody, going out and stretch. So he's not really stretching the floor for other guys. So they're going to have to figure out a way, whether it's like play him in pick and roll, or maybe if he has some strength, if he can post up some smaller guys to get him easier baskets than whatever the heck was going on in Detroit. Obviously it's a mess there, and they have like a million guys who play the same position. So maybe they can put him in a better position. But I agree with you. I don't think it moves the needle one way or the other. I mean, if Jeff Green goes down or one of their other guys who they plays goes down, it certainly helps to have somebody who's reliable enough that you can just plug in. Like, he's not a huge downgrade from a Jeff Green. So, like I said, it's always good to have veteran depth, but he's certainly not the piece that I would say, oh, well, now the Nets are going to win because they added Blake Griffin.
No,
I think they're in the same spot they were right before they added Blake Griffin, which is one of the best teams in the NBA, and he doesn't make them any worse, but I don't think he makes them any better.
He's just a depth piece at this point. That's about it. I mean, if Durant needs some more time off, he can fill in some minutes. If they want to give Harden some time off, because these players are so versatile, they can play him in that vein to just get ready for the playoffs. And like I said, in a particular playoff game, maybe he has a dozen points and they beat the Knicks in game 3 of the first round. I'm obviously just kind of forecasting ahead, but I don't think it's a huge move. He's a huge name, but he's not an impact player anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that it's been overblown because everybody knows the name because of the dunking and because he's done some acting too, and he does stand up, and he's a celebrity off the court as well, partially because he played in Los Angeles. But I've watched him against the Celtics a couple times this year, and they've lost to the Pistons, but he hasn't been a factor in that at all. So I don't. Yeah, I think it's good for him that he's on a team that has, aspirations beyond the first pick in the draft, like Detroit does. And that's why, obviously, he gave back a lot of money. $13 million is nothing to scoff at. I mean, he gave back, that's a large chunk of change to just get the hell out of Detroit. I can't really blame him at this point in his career. He obviously wants to try to win a championship. And I think the Nets give him as good a chance as any team in the NBA. And I don't think that, say, if he went to a team that would have utilized him more, I don't think that would have helped that team. Like, if he went to the Bucks, maybe they would use him a little bit more, or Lakers. I don't think it would have pushed them over the edge either.
No. Again, I just think a depth piece that's not going to have much of an impact.
Yeah. Well, the other news that we're going to talk about today before we wrap up the show, Sap, has nothing to actually do with what's going on the court, but the biggest story in the world right now are the vaccines for COVID and people choosing whether to get them or not. And sort of the rush to get vaccinated or the stubbornness to not get vaccinated. This also takes on a whole other meaning in the Black community in the United States, where vaccines have had a negative connotation for a long time, as there were experiments done on Tuskegee Airmen and a bad history in the United States with vaccines and Black citizens. But I'd like to think that's changed, yet there's still a lot of distrust in that community. And the NBA, for better or worse, has a lot of their members as leaders of the Black community. LeBron James, chief among them. So doing his media rounds at All-Star Weekend or All-Star Sunday, I guess this year, naturally the topic came up because, as we talked about many times with LeBron before, he doesn't care if you ask him about things that don't have anything to do with basketball. He likes to talk about things that are going on in the world. And like I said, this is the biggest story in the world right now. So he was asked if he was going to get vaccinated. And there's been pushback by a lot of NBA players because of the distrust of vaccines from Black people. And Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, said there's no mandate for players to get vaccines. So they asked him, and LeBron said, basically, it's private, and he's not going to share whether he's going to get vaccinated or not. Players shouldn't have to share if they're going to get vaccinated or not. It's a private thing. Jared Dudley, who is his teammate on the Lakers, was asked about this too. And someone said, shouldn't the significant decrease of serious illnesses or hospitalization alone be incentive to get the vaccine? Jared Dudley said, yes, but no one is going to rush when you're healthy, young, and without enough research. The FDA hasn't even approved it yet, I believe. I think it takes a year of data for that. That's untrue. It's just, he's not spreading a lie. He just doesn't know. That is patently false. The FDA has approved it. It's met all these standards. So there's a misinformation aspect with this. There's a fear aspect with this. And there's also, I'm concerned that there's a lack of leadership aspect with this in the Black community. I know President Obama has gotten his vaccine and said it, but for younger people, LeBron James means more, strange as it sounds, means more than than President Obama for a lot of people who don't care about politics. A lot of young black people who know and idolize LeBron James. I do think he's doing a disservice by not saying he's getting vaccinated.
Well, I think there's two different sides to this story. First of all, him getting vaccinated is one thing. And again, he's the most polarizing athlete besides being the most famous athlete in the world. If he were to get vaccinated, the blowback from people that don't like him or people on the right or whoever would say, what is a 36-year-old guy getting vaccinated for who's probably the healthiest man in America? I mean, he spends $2 million a year on his body. He's essentially a superhero. Why does he need to be vaccinated? So there would be blowback against him, wouldn't they? Wouldn't there be blowback against
maybe,
LeBron?
But at the same time, I think people know
it
doesn't discriminate coronavirus whether you're healthy or not. You can infect
but there would be my nephew just got vaccinated. He's the same age as LeBron James. He's a teacher, so obviously you want to have your teachers get vaccinated.
Right, my
so
wife is a teacher too, and she's hoping to get hers soon as well.
Right, so that's important. But if the best player, the most famous player in the NBA gets this vaccination, there are going to be people out there that say, well, he's getting special treatment because he's LeBron James. Now, the other aspect of it is how much he can move the needle, and I agree with you on that. Who are the most respected black people in America among black people? I would say it's President Obama, Oprah Winfrey, perhaps, who
yes,
I think was someone who helped get Barack Obama elected president. That election in 2008, the primary was so close between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And once Oprah Winfrey endorsed Obama, that kind of gave him enough to get over the top. And then after that, if you look at athletes, it's LeBron James, right? I mean, there's no NFL player, white, black, or anything. He's the guy.
A couple actors like Denzel Washington.
Yeah, is up there as well. I mean, those are the people that we talk about. So yeah, if the NBA were to cut a PSA with LeBron James and some of the other players like they did with More Than a Vote, I think that would help the black community accept
They've done it with older
vaccines
players.
are necessary. Right. I mean, Kareem did it.
And Bill Russell, yep.
Bill Russell. I mean, talk about...
Because they were eligible. I mean,
they're eligible, and they're both revered. I mean, they're bigger men than they are basketball players, Kareem.
Right, but they don't have the same...
They don't have the same cachet. The people don't know who they are. Yeah, I mean, I look at them I was fortunate to meet Kareem Abdul-Jabbar during the finals in 84, 85, and 87, interview him, a very kind of shy guy. But yeah, I mean, to me, he's a hero, but to the average young person, they don't even know who these people are.
They just look at him as an old guy getting a vaccine.
An old guy, but here's the key. The people that need to get vaccinated now tend to be older, so maybe they are the right people to cut those PSAs, right? Because a 65-year-old guy will know who Kareem or Bill Russell is. They know who LeBron is.
They were in the group that was eligible. Now that we're moving into the everybody is eligible part of it.
Then you want to get, I would say, yeah.
Every doctor that I've heard spoke on this or written about this has said to have this actually work, they're aiming for the 90% of everybody to be vaccinated. Yep. So it doesn't matter that, yes, obviously the elderly people are more at risk, but for the vaccination to actually mean something and be successful for us to get our way of life back to normal, everybody has to step up and get vaccinated. And I think that a lot of the people, fairly, because the history is not good with it, who are the most trepidatious about it are younger black people.
Followed by Latino people. Well, Latinos. I mean, I think they're also somewhat hesitant too. So yeah, it's important to get everybody vaccinated.
So I think it would go a long way.
No, it would. Yeah, because one of the reasons that he's my favorite athlete, my favorite player, is that he takes stands on social issues and he puts his money where his mouth is. I think he's sincere about that stuff. So sure, I'd like to see him step up as a leader. Sep? Again, I wonder if he's thinking there's going to be blowback that he gets the vaccine.
When has he cared about that?
Oh, I think he's aware of that stuff.
You think he cares about the blowback, especially once he becomes eligible, Sap? Once everybody in his age group becomes eligible, why should there be blowback? Because at that point, he conceivably wouldn't be taking it from anybody.
No, at that point, no. At this point, maybe it is an issue
get it. So,
that people are going to push back. And
but he's saying he's keeping it private.
I get that it's a private issue because it is a medical issue, but I also see where his leadership is needed here. Because if LeBron James and pick the second most popular black athlete in the NBA, who is it? Is it Steph Curry? Maybe.
Probably
Steph Curry. Okay, say
or
LeBron and
Kevin
Steph.
Durant. Maybe, I don't know.
I would say Steph more.
I was just going by all-star votes.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to do it. But it's LeBron and then someone else. If LeBron and Steph Curry, who apparently now are good friends, they were on the team together and. They were doing the powder drill before the game together, and LeBron's tweeting out how great Steph is. Maybe they cut a PSA together and say, and maybe have LeBron with his mother, who's, in the age group now to get the vaccine, and have Steph with his parents who were in the age group to get the vaccine and say, it's important that we get this vaccine to keep us all safe. And that would work wonders to get people to say, well, if LeBron and Steph Curry are saying it, maybe I'm more likely to get it. I mean, they sell a lot of sneakers. So, again, this is all a sales job. So they're going to sell the vaccine. So, I would love to see him step up here. I don't know what
if he fancies himself a leader, especially in his community, unless he's really ill-informed about the vaccine, then I just don't see why he wouldn't go out and say, hey, everybody get vaccinated. Because it's the right thing to do at this point.
It is. And he does surround himself with really smart people as well. And I think he's a smart guy, but he surrounds himself with people that advise him. I don't think LeBron does anything haphazardly.
No, he has since the decision, he's surrounded himself with very smart people.
Yeah. Before that, it was, and
it was just his friends.
It was basically. But I think he now, we'll look at this and say, okay, maybe this is what we have to do. But I will guarantee you, if you see on SportsCenter LeBron getting the vaccine like Friday, by next week, every Fox show is going to be attacking him. Why is LeBron James getting a vaccine at 36 years old and healthy? Is he special? Is he,
I know that. I know that would happen. But I'm saying, Sap, what's the point of him saying I'm going to keep it? I'm going to keep it private. Not that that's his
audience either, because at that point it's like, who gives a?
But right now, say I'm keeping it private. Why wouldn't he just say, when it's my turn, I'm definitely going to get vaccinated?
Yeah, I would prefer he did that. Yeah, I would prefer he did that.
He's not a private person at all. He's in fact made it a point of not being a private person. He's expressed pride that he is willing to weigh in on issues and that he will go out in the public and mix it up with the, Joe the plumbers or whoever you want, especially in his community. So why is this now the issue where he's saying, you know what, I'm keeping that private? That
can be the only thing.
I was surprised by it because, again, it's the biggest issue in the world right now, not just in the country. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest issue in the entire world. And this is where he's saying, I'm going to bow out of this conversation. It struck me as very odd.
Yeah, because it's not about dollars and cents, right? Like, it's not going to make him a lot of money or cost him a lot of money if he weighs in on this and says, I'm getting vaccinated and so should you. We know what happened in China, which I didn't support him on because I think the Chinese government is one of the most abhorrent governments, if not the most abhorrent government in the country. And I give Daryl Morey credit for a year ago speaking out against them. There goes our viewership in
China, Sap. Thanks.
Well, they can go fuck themselves. But I'm not a fan of the Chinese government, the Saudi government, and yet we remain friends with them. Not a fan of the Russian government either. So there goes our Russian and Saudi audiences.
You're blowing it up all over the map. Said,
my point with that was there was money to be made or lost in China. We know how big the Chinese market is to the NBA. I wish LeBron had been like Daryl Morey and said, yeah, you know what? I think what they do over there is terrible. The only thing
that's
is
the real leadership, Sap, right? Being willing to take the slings and arrows.
It is, absolutely. But I also think that you have to weigh in what's going on in your country before other countries. Okay, so
I agree.
Let's fix our country before we start to fix other countries. So I can kind of see that. I give Daryl Morey all the credit in the world. I was just hoping to death he didn't lose his job because of that. And eventually Houston moved on from him, and now he's in Philadelphia. And
those are way trickier waters to weigh into than this. This seems pretty simple.
Yeah, I wish he would come out. And Adam Silver has a really good relationship with him. And they're kind of handling this walking on eggshells because I don't think they want to show their players getting vaccinated earlier than the population that is the same age of them. But I think once it gets there, then maybe Adam Silver, who I think is the best commissioner in sports, picks his two biggest stars, which are LeBron and pick someone else. And I'd say Steph Curry, especially Steph Curry, because I think he's got even more reach, say, in the female market than LeBron, right? I mean, the women love Steph Curry.
Also in the
young
evangelical market for whatever reason.
They're a perfect duo. They really are, because LeBron's the guy who's made it from the single parent household. Steph's the guy who's came from a family of affluence. So it's a great story, the two of them. So maybe Adam Silver pulls them aside and says, guys, we need to do this to help your community, which is a big part of the NBA, to get vaccinated. Because,
by the way, it's hit their communities the hardest. Hit the Black community and Latino community the hardest, coronavirus. I'd say he fancies himself a leader, which I respect, and I think he has been on a lot of issues.
Yep.
But this is important. So if you fancy yourself a leader, lead.
Yep.
Right now is the time. There's no financial gain for you. There's no real blowback for you. Lead. No. Say you're going to get it. Show yourself getting it. It would go. Yep. I do feel like it would go a really, really long way if you were to do it. You see, guys like Jared Dudley, who's a longtime NBA veteran and a smart guy, has all this misinformation on it. And if he has misinformation on it, he has money. He has access to doctors, team doctors and stuff telling him stuff. And he's wrong. Then what's the average person, sitting in Akron right now, the average Black person, it might have a complete misconception of what the vaccine is. And if LeBron James were to say, this is safe, take it, I think that makes a huge difference.
Right. It does. Although that's kind of ingrained, whatever word you want to use, I may not be using those words correctly, into that community because of history, right? So there is that apprehension. But it
doesn't get changed until somebody like LeBron James changes it.
That's exactly it. And it was great, like you said, Kareem and Bill Russell, because obviously they're much older. They got vaccinated, and that was so important.
And maybe they convinced older Black people. Maybe they were.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's just for them.
Yeah.
But for younger Black people, it's LeBron.
It's LeBron, right. And again, now we're starting to see younger people get vaccinated to the point where everyone's vaccinated by the end of May. And now we can start to move on and get closer to our regular way of life, whatever that may be.
Yeah. So, this story just surprised me, like I said, because he's so not private, and this is such a major issue, and he likes to lead. It was a weird story. So we'll see if he changes his tune as, like you said, Seth, by May, it seems like everybody will be able to get it. And so when he is able to get it as a 36-year-old healthy guy with no underlying conditions, which is the same bracket I'm in, I'm 31. Right. Maybe then he'll change his tune and cut a PSA, or at the very least send a tweet out, of him, get a picture of him.
Was he surprised by the question? Maybe he was just kind of caught cold by the question, and then he was like, "How do I?"
He said it's a family decision. I'm going to talk to my family about it and keep it private. It was a weird answer for somebody who's just, again, not private at all.
No,
has never sought to be.
No. He's out there. I mean, he's been out there since he was 16. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and he's happy with that role. He's like Jordan has become a recluse. I don't think LeBron's ever going to be a recluse. I think he's going to own a team. I think he's going to be involved politically. I think he's going to be.
I feel like if one of these YouTube influencers suddenly was like, no, like I need my privacy, please. It's like, what? Well, you've been in our face for 20 years, LeBron.
Or a talk show host.
And opining on everything, by the way.
Everything, yeah. Or a talk show host going, I really don't have a take on that. You know what we do, right? We do this for a living. We have to have a take on it, whether we even know what the hell we're talking about. So you want to have that. Unless he took it literally and he was just talking about himself with the vaccine, not on what the community should do. So, again, it's a delicate situation, but I think that Commissioner Silver and those close to LeBron may say that this is going to help the community.
He does have time to rectify it. Yeah, he has time to rectify it.
Of course, it's still soon.
His initial answer was just odd. It just struck me as weird.
And a lot of times with him, I've seen that where he kind of is awkward with something, and then those close to him kind of get him headed in the right direction, and then he makes the right decision. I think it would be important. Again, if I'm running the NBA and I want to get that message out there, and we did this with more than a vote, I'm going to pick LeBron James, Steph Curry, or in all of sports, maybe I'm picking LeBron James and say Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
Maybe those are the two guys, one from each sport.
Williams.
Serena Williams. I don't know anybody in baseball that carries any weight. I mean,
Tiger Woods, I guess, does.
Well, yeah, from his hospital bed. So but essentially it'd be LeBron, Patrick Mahomes. Those to me are the two biggest stars in sports right now. I mean, Tom Brady's obviously incredible, but Brady probably doesn't believe in the vaccine because he
people are
deals
probably
with this
thinking the
through
vaccine
TB12.
is made of his own blood at this point. He's probably immune to all diseases.
He's a cyborg. He doesn't get it, although his parents got it, and his dad was in the hospital for 2 weeks. So.
And you're saying Mahomes, but it's not even close. It's not even close. Mahomes is the
LeBron.
biggest star in the NFL,
LeBron,
but LeBron's the biggest star athlete in the planet, Sap.
We're not buying cleats because of Patrick Mahomes. People are buying sneakers because of LeBron James. The other guy that can speak out on this is someone who's in my age group. Wouldn't hurt if Michael Jordan did this. Could you picture Michael Jordan?
Well, like you're saying, he's like, when does he ever do media? Ever?
He doesn't do anything. But here's the perfect scenario, Jet. LeBron James, Michael Jordan, the two greatest players of all time who don't appear to have any relationship. I don't think Michael Jordan really respects LeBron. I think LeBron idolizes Michael Jordan. Imagine if you could get the two of them together, right? And
push
it would be great. This. It would work. It would definitely work. That's my idea. I got to get a hold of someone.
I think it's a great idea. Oh, well, I don't know. We certainly can't get a hold of Michael Jordan. He, like I said, but I don't even know if the last time I can remember a camera in his face that wasn't for his documentary.
That's about it. Yeah.
And he,
does he go to games?
Was not willing to do the documentary. He didn't want to do it.
No. He waited 20 years. I mean, it was from 1998. Yeah, that would be the perfect thing. And again, the person who could probably put it together, Barack Obama. Because when the players
Jordan wouldn't do it without cajoling. To be with LeBron, I'm saying.
Yeah, it would.
Because it invites the comparison by them both being there. He's petty.
He's that petty. He's that petty. I know. He really is. And may he rest in peace. Maybe Kobe would have been a guy to do this.
Yeah,
I think Kobe was becoming much more socially conscious because there's no one at that level. There's LeBron, Michael, and Kobe a little below those guys. They would have been the perfect guys.
There's no great black boxers anymore who people respect. No. Like Floyd Mayweather's a scumbag. So.
Right. Who's going to listen to him? And is Magic really the guy? So I think that LeBron and Michael would be perfect. And I think President Obama would be the perfect guy to try to put this whole thing together.
Might be the only person on the planet who could facilitate
it. Other than me, I
Jordan,
came up with
Jordan
the
is
idea.
that petty. And I love Jordan and put him ahead of LeBron, but I acknowledge that he's that petty. He wouldn't do it.
Yeah. No.
Unless he was like really guilted into doing it. But so exactly. I mean, listen, lots of things happening in the NBA off the court, which is why it's such an exciting league. Is you don't hear anything about the NFL and the vaccines right now.
So you know what, Jet? I've got a column just got posted on Full Press Coverage. It's the 50th anniversary Ali Frazier, which is the biggest sporting event in the history of my life. The fight of the century.
Yeah, and the night that they broke into the FBI to steal documents. I just read a story about that.
Oh, it was the same night, March 8th, 1971?
On purpose, because they knew the whole world was going to be
watching that fight. Yeah. But I think the next column is going to be LeBron, since almost every column I post on Full Press Coverage has something to do with LeBron. But LeBron and Michael Jordan should be the two guys to make their community aware that the vaccine is important.
I think that's a great column idea, and
I'll tweet it to LeBron, and maybe I'll get credit for that. And thank you.
You're welcome for the seed of the idea.
You will get credit.
I should be mentioned in the first paragraph of that column.
Right away, before LeBron and Michael Jordan. Why not?
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate it. You can find that and our show on fullpresscoverage.com. This show being called the Pick and Roll NBA Podcast with Jet and Sap. I'm Jet. He's Sap of the many columns about LeBron James. He also occasionally writes about Aaron Rodgers, if you're interested in that too.
Mario Lemieux,
I actually will absolutely read the column on the fight of the century because I love boxing and I've seen that fight, obviously, as anybody who's really a sports fan should go back and watch any Muhammad Ali fight. We're pretty much all a blast to watch. And we just, unfortunately, don't get the boxing at nearly that level anymore. And if you do, if you get somebody at that level, he doesn't fight somebody else at that level. So it's a mess. At least in the NBA, everybody plays everybody. So you have to see the best guys go up against the best. But we will be back on Wednesday, where we look ahead to the second half of the season, make our predictions, prognostications, maybe not just records, but seeing who we think are going to make some big trades, talk about the trade deadline coming up. So it should be a jam-packed week for us, despite basketball not returning until Thursday. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. We are on Spotify. We are on fullpresscoverage.com, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, basically everywhere. Just look for the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. I am Jet Stryer. That is John Sapichetti. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. See you on Wednesday, everybody.